Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our day 2 of our webinar series on international perspectives in social work practice.
Good morning to all.
Morning.
Good morning. Kindly log in before 15 minutes prior to the scheduled time of the session. Please turn off your computer. Please turn off your camera and microphone during the session. Post all your questions in the chat box only. Questions will be answered as per the convenience of time. Please use your full name as a Zoom ID. Please make sure to fill the feedback form circulated in the YouTube and Zoom chat box at the end of each session to mark your attendance for the session. We look forward for your active and constant participation. Thank you.
Thank you. Now I request our HOD, Dr. C. Francis, to deliver the welcome address.
Good morning to one and all present here for the second day of this webinar session. I invite all the participants who have registered and attending the seminar today. For this today's session, we invite our distinguished speaker, Ms.Priya David. Madam is working as a improvement lead in the Children and the Family Safeguarding Team UK. Madam is an expert in this field, and at this moment, Madam is dealing with the subject titled on Ethical responsibilities of social workers in the practice during COVID-19 with special reference to family and child welfare setting. At this moment, on behalf of Madras Club Social Work, on behalf of our principal and management, I welcome all the participants as well as the speaker of the day, Ms.Priya David. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. It gives us immense pleasure in introducing our speaker for the day, Ms. Priya David, to all the participants. Ma'am has got 23 years of experience in social work internationally and in various local authorities in UK. And she has specialized in children and families, covering various aspects such as referral and assessment services, court teams, children disability and quality assurance teams. Ma'am is currently working as practice improvement lead at West Sussex County Council for Children and Family Safeguarding Teams, UK. Ma'am works with managers on ensuring robust management grip and oversight during COVID-19 lockdown period. She is expertised in managing profile efficiently and building multi-agency partnerships to protect children and manage organization development. She is also a committee member of BASW, International Federation of Social Workers, and a member of senior management team planning and implementation of the business objectives of the organization. Ma'am has actively involved herself in supporting diaspora social workers in UK and is also the vice president of UK MSW, a professional forum for social workers from the state of Kerala. Ma'am has vast experience in management of teams and services with children subjected to Children in Need and Children Child Protection Plan. Ma'am has coached various managers and social workers through collaborative leadership style for improvement of safeguarding services, supervision, and management practices. She has excellent relationship and interpersonal skills and is an adept at holding stakeholders to account and building positive relationships. She has undertaken various roles, including those of senior social worker, service manager, team manager, consultant social worker manager, and practice lead at DPR Consulting Services. She has worked at various institutions, including Survey Children's Services, Slouch Children Trust, Reading Borough Council and Surrey County Council, Buckingham's County Council, as well as a social worker in India and Abu Dhabi, UAE. To express her in simple words, Ma'am is a technically strong, resilient, and supportive leader, resourceful and a collaborative team player, known for her driving results, delivering outcome-focused solutions, and effective change management. We are very honored to have you with us today, Ma'am. We request you to take over the session.
Morning. Morning, all. Thank you so much for the brilliant introduction. I just want to thank Dr. Francis, Dr. Rachel, all the faculty members and Kirtika for your wonderful introduction. Thank you. I'm so conscious that, you guys are more awake than me. So I'm, bear with me if I am, I'm still warming up. Okay. This morning, I think it's, this topic that we have spoken, I'm going to be dividing this into a couple of, headings, and I will first be speaking about my own journey into social work and my experiences before I go on to the topic. Now, guys, I am so privileged to be addressing young aspiring social workers, because tomorrow you are tomorrow's change agent. And I'm conscious that possibly at this point in time, you don't even comprehend, what an amazing decision you have taken, to become the advocates and voice of the voiceless, to become, of the neglected, the deprived, and misunderstood and sometimes forgotten. So so well done. If I want to start this meeting with saying, well done, all of you, and welcome to this great profession of social work, because you are the one individual that, in the destiny of many children's life to make a change. So let me, as I said, let me start off with my own journey. It's a long journey, and I know it is hot now in India. I'm sure you would have had your lunch, and if you're sitting under the fan or the AC, and if you decide to close your eyes and listen to my talk, please have an annoying friend who will sit next to you and wake you up. So please don't sleep off. And I can't see you guys either. I can only see my face, which is not, which I would have loved to see you guys. So it's as I said, it's been a long journey for me. And when I chose to do MSW, I'm just thinking, I only knew I wanted to help people. There was nothing more I knew, but never knew how rich this MSW course is, and how it would impact me as a person, and make a lifelong impression on my life on the whole. For me, I should say it was a package deal, coming from moving from a girls only world till the first year of my, my first honors degree in, doing my BSc, and then thrown into a co-education, as education, which I had to travel a long way to go to Madras Christian College. It was more like which is more like I would say more like a forest than a college. So, that whole experience was a steep learning curve. And along with the placements they threw me in was, I'm still reminded of those frightening days, I should say, where I was sent to one of the biggest mental hospital in India, in Chennai, Kilpok. The TB, and my second placement was with and I was the SCARF, Schizophrenic Research Foundation. Then the third placement was with TB and AIDS patient. And that time AIDS was just, very, very new. So it was an absolutely, a daunting experience for me. But it played such a big role in fine-tuning me and gave me a solid foundation of understanding what the real world is, and also the inherent worth and dignity of all people, regardless of the background and circumstance they come from. They made alive for me as a student, my responsibility of advocacy for those who could not, speak for themselves. So maybe you're sitting there, not, your first year, and you really don't know what this course is going to bring you, but it's going to bring you out as a very rounded person. Okay, so be ready for that. Now, as I said, I passed out. I feel very old before all you young people. Um, Many years ago in 97, and I only worked 2 years in India. My first placement was in AIDS prevention, as an AIDS prevention educator. And at that point in time, the word sex itself was such a big taboo. And my role was to was to educate students and, about what the right information on how AIDS was transmitted. And you can imagine, as a young person going with as a group of people, going to schools and colleges when sex was not much spoken about, the whole topic was an exciting topic. Maybe it was not an exciting topic for the older people wondering what are we trying to do, but it was the beginning of a protection work I started doing, without me realizing I was doing that. And then I then moved on to become a hospital social worker for about 11 months. And it was in that setup in Madras Medical Mission, where again I worked with children in the pediatric ward as and in that setup I understood how important the emotional well-being of a child is to do well, because any child who was prepared for the surgery, was emotionally strong, made through the surgery very well. And many children who were so scared, was not emotionally prepared, was not explained, was not spoken to, and who was terribly scared, we lost those children. So the emotional well-being of a child, in the overall, in addressing any crisis situation, was made clear there. And as all Indian young ladies, marriage didn't wait for me. So I got married, and I had to move to the Middle East. To my surprise, and to my dismay, I would say, When I went, there was no social work jobs in the Middle East. I went to Dubai, Abu Dhabi, that kind of place, and it was the most, and this whole thing of what a waste of my education and all this that I have learned, what has happened. So at that, so I had to get creative in my approach. So I did a lot of freelance social working. When I say freelance, I did, I did a lot of workshop as part of my church, and part of many churches. I was on children issues dealing with children specifically, teenage issues, parenting issues. I used to write articles, and then I also taught in an evening college for open universities on psychology, which has nothing to do with social work. I was 1 year as a psychology teacher in an Indian school. It's all was my effort of using my skill that I learned, and before I became a school social worker. The experience of school social work in the Middle East was so interesting, because I was working in an Indian school where there were two different settings of boys and girls, but they still managed to see each other. Apart from all the behavior issues and the learning issues and parental issues and things that you deal with at school, the greatest horror or the greatest sadness was I had many young girls come for counseling, and the primary issue was sexual abuse. I'm speaking about children, young girls coming from a very middle class family, doing very well, but sexual abuse became the theme. I had teachers tell me this girl sleeps in the class, and then when the child comes, it turned out to be she was abused either by her father, or she was abused by her brother or her cousin brother. And it was really the scale of it was becoming, and the system was so weak in terms of safeguarding structures that we had to become creative as to how to protect these children. So it was more informing the head teacher, it was more speaking to one protective person in the family, empowering the child, and it was frustrating at times. So when an opportunity came for me, when in UK, I applied for it, and I took that opportunity to move to UK. And I would say I came here in 2004, and I started my work in children and families in the assessment team. Um, it's a complete. I was sharing with some of your with Dr. Rachel the culture shock of coming to a new country, and and completely different way of working when compared to my experience back home or in the Middle East. But it didn't take long for me to formulate some early learning, and that was a few early learning that I made. Children are abused all over the world, regardless of being a first world country or a developing country. And there is, whether it was in India, whether it was in Middle East, whether it was UK, children were getting abused because of their age. They are vulnerable, they were getting abused. And one thing was made very clear for me in my mind: there is no justification for a child to be subjected to any kind of abuse. Nobody can give any explanation. And when I speak of abuse, I'm just not speaking about sexual abuse. I'm speaking about inappropriate chastisement, which in India we see, we can smack our children, but to what extent? Emotionally degrading things. So, and socially not giving opportunities. So it is a whole load of things that we look into. So one of the conclusion I came, there is no justification for a child to be subjected to any kind of abuse. And as I said, abuse is just not sexual, is much beyond that. It's a holistic abuse. Now, so these are my primary learning that I actually learned from coming to UK. And I understood, coming from a country like India and the Middle East and all that, you come with the myth that everything is, it's a promised land. It's not a promised land. There's huge poverty, there's huge issues, all over the world. And it's only when you come into it, you realize what, the depth of the issues you're dealing with. So I this morning want to speak about basically how to work. I know we are speaking about ethical responsibilities, but I want to just speak about, what is, the basic skills of working with children. What is the basic foundation you have to have? And what are some of the basics, non-negotiables for children? Those are the things. And then I will touch on ethical responsibilities and stop. And then we can leave it to your questions. So let me start, share my screen with my PowerPoint. Hold on. So I'm going to be speaking about getting it right for children. Let me just get this sorted. Okay, so the whole focus today is on how do we get it right for every child, and whichever part of the world we're working, whether you're working in India or anywhere in part, how do we get this right? Okay, and so for which I want to just speak about some key foundations that you have, that each one of us, we are all, in the world of social work, you never reach a point, where you think you have learned, because you are dealing with lives, and life is always different. It's dynamic, it's challenging. So so it's you keep learning, and some foundation you need to have when you're working with children. First is the child's voice. When you work with children, again, in different contexts, when I worked in the Middle East and in India, and even here, sometimes a child's voice is not heard. When I say the child's voice, what is a child telling about in that particular situation? Whether it is abuse, whether it is you're working with youth offending, juvenile system, whether you're working from an orphanage, for a children's home. What is the child's words? What is a child saying in every decision making? If you can place that child and how that will, your decision making and the decision making of the authorities or the family or whatever, how is that impacting on the child? And have you spoken to the child? So it's very important that any work with children, you take the time to listen to what the child is saying about in that particular circumstance. And the second thing is, what's a child's story? When you work with a child, understand the background, understand the context, understand the particular situation the child is placed in. What is the developmental needs of that child? How are what is the circumstance a child is coming from? I don't know, whether the child is um, the the child of probably a sex worker, or probably who are coming from with parents with mental health, or of substance misuse, or migrant poverty. So understand the context and the story of the child before while you work for the child. And the third thing I want to make it I want to touch on is, see, children need help quickly. It is not about getting the procedures, getting this, that, and delaying the process, because one day extra in a child's life, you will be the trauma they go through. It could be life and death for a child. So it's the importance of the child's time scales. Remember, you're dealing with children who are very vulnerable, who are, maybe cannot protect themselves. So even half a day, one day makes a big difference. So understanding the child's time scales is very important. And the fourth foundation I want, we can never, as social workers, we can, the child has a world. They have school, they have health, they have, their parents, they have their extended family, and they have other, probably if he has some medical needs, have doctors. So you cannot work as a social worker alone and see and think that you can make an improvement in a child's life. It's about how do you jointly work with other professionals and meet the specific needs. So that's the four foundation you need to have: your child's voice, a child's story, a child's time scale, and child's world. Now, moving on from the foundation, what I'm just going to touch on some of the basic non-negotiables. When you work with a child, this is non-negotiable. I know I was speaking in the context of COVID-19, but where it is, where many things have come to a standstill. and many migrant workers, they have lost their jobs. Poverty is hitting hard everywhere. Many people, the many children have lost their parents, and many have lost, are not able to go to school. And children who are, and many themselves might, lack of social distancing um, might get this illness. So we're working in a very in a very difficult situation, and something that has been thrown on us, without, at a point in time where we didn't even expect. So let's see. So in that context, and in a bigger context, what are the basic things for a child you need to understand? So I've mentioned few things here, which is not rocket science at all. I think the most, for a child who is, for a child to have to succeed in life, you need these basic things: basic care, safety, health, health, achieving, nurtured, active. They need to feel respected, responsible, and included. I will go through what I mean by this. But a child who has all these met, will turn out to be, successful learners, responsible citizens, and efficient people, who will come out to strong, resilient young people. Now let me just go on to touch a little bit on all these 8 points quickly. Now, the first thing that I want to say is basic care needs. Now, you might think, oh, this is, how is this important? And I think this is the bottom line. As I said, when I came to, I have put some stats here, where 61 million children in India don't have sufficient access to food. And we know poverty in India. But I also put about the stats in UK. There are 30% of children living in poverty in UK. And it's expected by 2022, we'll have 5.2 million children. And in the world, we see there are 385 million children in the world who live in extreme poverty. Now, what does this mean for them? What does it mean for them? We were worried on, many of our children here in UK, and I'm sure government schemes back home too, for the children who come from poor, who are coming from the lower economic families, they, in schools, they have school meals given. There's a big worry about, when during school closure, there's a big worry that many of these children go hungry through the day. So one of the things I want to make it clear is, all over the world, whichever part of, whether you're working in US, UK, India, Sri Lanka, where, you name it, any part of the world, this basic care needs, you need to ensure, we need to ensure as social workers, are these children, because of the circumstance in the family, are they getting food at all? Are they getting, do they have good shelter, and appropriate clothing? I've said appropriate clothing. We know how children, who are poverty stricken, how they are, when the weather is, whether they have appropriate clothing according to the weather. And even too, that's an issue here too, that it's an issue. Do they have appropriate clothing? So as a social worker, I think, you first focus on the basics. Okay, is the basic need met for this child? The next point I want to speak about is safety. I did touch on this earlier when I said, when you're working with children, every child feels safe only when just bear with me, when every child, I just want to reduce this so I can see the full picture. Can somebody reduce I cannot see one part of the screen, so it would be helpful if you can reduce the profiles coming in the side so we can see the screen. Okay, I can't, anyway, so that's fine. Okay, looking at, every child needs to be safe and loved, so I want to, and as social workers, for us to be thinking about the safety of the child. When I say safety of the child, as I said, it is just not, it's protecting children from neglect. What is neglect? When people ignore them, when their needs are not, from day-to-day needs are not met, the parents are caught up in their own issues of marital issues or DV, domestic violence, or alcoholism or drug use, that the child is there, but the child's need is not met. So when that child is not safe in that circumstance, the child is suffering emotional harm because of that, their emotional needs not met. Children, when they are physically inappropriately chastised or placed in dangerous situation, of people coming in and out of the house, they don't know who's coming, who's going, taken care by different people, and physically they are in a dangerous situation. And as I spoke, sexually also, so safety is it encompasses all these aspects of emotional, physical, social, sexual, and their day-to-day needs met. And it's so important, as we social workers, that you're curious. Just don't see the symptoms, but see what is the reason behind this symptom. Why is this child behaving? When teachers used to come and tell me, this girl is not studying properly, and she's, or she's sleeping in the class, to be curious. What's happening at home? What is things okay? To be curious and to be reflective, and use different creative techniques to understand the world of the child. And I've written that triangulate evidence. When you speak to people, link all those evidence in your work, so you understand what is the impact on this child, and if this child is safe. And can you move to the next slide, please? Can you move to the next slide, please? Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, we can hear you.
But I can't move to the next slide.
Ma'am, can you try stopping the screen share and sharing it again?
No, it says your screen sharing is paused.
So please resume the screen share, ma'am.
No, it doesn't allow me to. It says stop share. Hold on. Okay, it's moved on now. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so the next aspect that I want to speak about is being healthy. Now, it is, when I say being healthy, it's having quick access. It's just not being healthy physically, but also I'm speaking about the mental health. There is a great increase in the mental health of children and young people all over the world, just not here in UK, but all over the world, because of the pressure and the stress that is put on children, and the expectations that's put on children. So it's very important that when we work with children, you again understand the mental health need of the child. You understand whether there are any physical issues for the child, and also helping them to make safe choices. Being healthy is also, as a social worker, we have a duty to help them make safe and healthy choices. Now, I really like this quote of what Mother Teresa said. We think sometimes poverty is being hungry, naked, and homeless. But actually, the poverty of being unwanted, unloved, and uncared is the greatest poverty. And we must start in our homes to remedy this kind of poverty. So again, being healthy is, the poverty of being unwanted, the poverty of being unloved and uncared, the emotional well-being. And when I speak about health, I'm speaking about the whole aspect of being healthy for a child. The next thing that I want to speak, is achieving. Now, every child, when you're working with children who are coming, maybe migrants or, slums or laborers or, in homes, it's so important that you ensure these children have access to education. Clearly, UNICEF is selling this
Excuse me, ma'am.
25%.
Sorry to interrupt you. The slide is not visible here. So can you stop share and start sharing it again?
Let me just try. Share screen.
Yes, ma'am. Now it is perfect.
See now?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, okay. Sorry about that.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Not at all, not at all, not at all. Yeah. So I think the thing that I'm saying is when you're working with children, please ensure that that they are able to achieve in life, because it's important for them to learn, to develop their skills, and to because that will give them the confidence. Our education has given us confidence, so it's so important that that we develop ensure they are in education, so that it develops they develop their confidence and their and their self-esteem, and worth. The next thing is about being nurtured. Now, what is many of our children, it's so important that that we have a nurturing. What do I mean by nurtured? That come from a setup or an environment where they are cared for, they are loved for, because that helps to build to build trust, empathy, compassion, and parents who are warm and give them some freedom, their self-esteem and confidence develop, they develop their cognitive ability, they are able to understand boundaries. Now I'm thinking in terms of when so many sexual abuse cases and all or emotional abuse and all that comes, you think about where is the boundaries missing here. So when they come from nurtured good parenting, they have they're very clear about how they can control themselves, how to respect people. So again, these issues, these kind of nurturing environment is lost when the parents are struggling with their own issues of mental health, or or financial situation, poverty, alcoholism, and we are going to be, those are the settings we are going to be working in, that you guys are going to be working in. So for you to understand whichever environment the child you're going to place, or you're going to or help the families understand, it is important for your child to grow. Otherwise they are going to come through the same cycle, and they're going to repeat the same cycle that you did. So to help parents to think beyond themselves, in terms of just not providing the basic food, and but to meet these needs of offering a nurturing environment for children. Okay. And the next thing that I want to say is, I've written about socially active and responsible. It's so important that children have opportunities. Again, it is just not in India, but many parts of the world where, that children actually, and especially if they're coming from difficult families and situations, they are not taught that they do not they're not given opportunities to them, and that will also and give them age and developmentally appropriate responsibilities, okay, with supervision, because that will enable them to work as part of a group. Without your knowledge, you're teaching them teamwork, you're teaching them to cooperate with others, the this thing I've written about respected and included. Now, discrimination, when I say it's so important, as I've always through my slide, I've told you the importance to be heard and involved in decision making, but not to be discriminated, you know, based on the kind of class the child is coming from. There is no inclusion is not a right, is a right, not a privilege to a select few. It's a right for a child. You need to include the child. It is not to include, as social workers, not to discriminate them based on gender. Oh, it's a boy child or girl child. Don't, let's not, to be very careful to give that dignity and worth of the child. And a child with disability, there's no difference from any other child. So to be very, very, to test our values all the time, and to ensure that our work will not discriminate any child, and that every child will be given the best of opportunities and best of chances in life. Now, so those are the basic things, and I just want to touch on few ethical things that you need to keep in mind while working with children. One, I know you're in the first year, or I think it's so important for you to think, clarify why you coming to social work. What is your goal of, what is your goal? It's important that you think, oh, what am I trying to achieve? Is it to join some big organizations and make money, or is it about actually making a difference in the lives of children? So it's very important that because if because your response to your work will be determined by the goal you're coming in. So I think it's so important that you really clarify, why am I doing this, and take time to reflect on your own. That's one thing. The second thing, you need to, it's so important that you have a good knowledge about the human rights that relate to your area of practice, whether it's children or families or adults. You need to know what is the human right for this child, because as I've written in my third point, if you have to advocate and fight and think about the of representing a child, if you do not know the rights of the child yourself, you cannot advocate strongly for any child or any family. So it's important that you have a good knowledge of human rights that relate to your area of practice, and that you understand it is your role to advocate as part of social work practice. Now, the other thing, regularly update yourself on development and how this affects your practice. Understand what are the latest development, and be curious, always be curious, reflect, and as I earlier said, triangulate all this information so that you understand, what is the real situation for this child. So, and unless you are transparent and honest, you will never, and we can never make meaningful changes. And the fourth point I've written there is assess, plan, and review. Test and learn from your practice, including, always, when you're doing a work, you think, am I actually being effective? Test, am I plan your work, review your work, because especially now, we are in uncharted waters, and you will go to different setups and you will realize, actually, you have never worked in that setup. So always review, am I doing this right? Am I doing this right? And I've written here about effective recording. You are dealing with lives, and you really need to be, whether you're working in the smallest of organization or the biggest of organization, it's important that you keep a written record of your work, so that that each of us maintain accountability, because it's about being safe in your practice. So it's important that you make a journal, you make notes, and whether people are asking you or not, you have it, so that you have, if something happens, you know what you have done. So effective recording is another, it's your responsibility. There's no negotiables on that, because you can, you are held accountable for the work you do with people. The other thing, the other the key thing about social work is, we are dealing with difficult lives and difficult situations. So to be able to, it's so important that you work from a very strength based practice. Look at the strengths. Not everything is doom and gloom. In all those families, even in the poorest of the families you go, there is something positive there, there is some joy there. So you know pull that up and see how you can build that up, and your compassion to see these are the strengths in this, even in this situation, and to build on that. And so important, the power of relationship in social work. You want to do good work in social work, you need to know to build good relationships with the clientele you're going to be dealing with. And again, our work can be difficult at times, so learning to be calm, purposeful, have a good humor, learn to laugh at yourself, your work, and be compassionate. Again, that I would like to, you know and I don't know about, it's so important that you have people you can, you have your own mentor. I don't know if any of you, it's important, whether you're an academician or you're a practice, you're practicing, whether you're a student, it's important for you to have good mentor and good supervision and support, because you are better with two minds rather than you doing alone. And for somebody to critically reflect on your work, or and help you, being that critical friend, and say, but why, but what, but how couldn't you do, is there something that, is there a gap here, is it something you can do differently? So don't be afraid of people, of seeking support, and somebody who can critically help you out. And the last point I want to make in your responsibility, while you care for others, it's so important that you care for yourself, because this, and you learn to let steam off, and you think all the time. I don't know whether, in terms of, you have been taught about science of safety, apply that to yourself. What's working well for me? what am I worried about? What is the change that I have to do? Think about, your, how you can take it. So important that you take care of yourself, so that you don't do social work for a couple of years, get burnt out, and then say, I don't want to do anything with social work. Only if you take care of yourself will you continue to ensure the purpose you've come in for. I just want to end with two quotes just before I end my. Every kid is one smart. Never think like that, because you have an ability to make somebody else's life better, even if you don't know it. Maybe you don't realize it, but never underestimate your ability, because you are doing, if you work with families and children with a purpose, with a true purpose of supporting them, you never know how many lives you will touch. My daughter, reminds me every time I'm tired and I think, oh my God, she reminds me, Mom, you're doing such a noble profession and you are helping so many children out. You do not know how many children you are helping, and that keeps me going. So you please don't underestimate your ability. I know you're still in the beginning stages, but I would say well done for choosing, and keep your focus on what you want to achieve, and make that change you are called to be making. You are the destiny for many people. Yeah. So any I'll leave it to the floor for any questions.
Thank you so much, ma'am. That was a wonderful presentation. We have a few questions from both Zoom and YouTube chat box.
Yeah.
The first question is from Ms. Nityashree. Her question is, when you did not get the correct job for your degree, how did you manage yourself? And what was your mental state?
Not giving up. When I didn't get my correct job for my degree, I thought, I am sure I have not done this course without a purpose. I have done this course with a purpose. I won't give up. And as I said in my, in the beginning, so I started thinking, what is the skills I have? So I started putting myself out there and, informing people that I'm a social worker and I'm able to do workshops. And once you've done a workshop in one or two places and they like your workshop, I was busy, I was called all over, in different places. So, and I remember going to a school to teach. I like teaching because, so to teach psychology. And that man, the person who interviewed me said, actually, do you know the difference between psychiatry and psychology? He said, yes, I know, but give it to me. And because I, as part of, our course, we study the psychology, we study, so I am able to teach them, so took it as a challenge. So not giving up will be the answer for that, and thinking of creative ways.
Thank you, ma'am. The next question is from Anita. Her question is, there is no licensing protocols. What is your opinion on licensing for social work practitioners in the Indian context?
I think licensing is I hope and wish one day, that that social work will have registration and will get licensed in India. The reason I'm saying that is, you cannot, for us to have our registration, we have to year on year ensure, we have to show the Social Work England here that we have done training, we have kept ourselves up to date with the latest information. So we have the continuous professional development. So we have to show that we have, so we have to fill a form, and every renewal you need to show that you've been learning and you have, there is no disciplinary action taken against you. So it is the authority ensuring that you are keeping in touch with the reality of things happening around you, and also that you are not people understand that you have not done grave mistakes in your profession, and you can continue to work. And I think in India, not having that kind of licensing, actually prevents that kind of an accountability for keeping oneself abreast of new developments, and also to keep an accountability of your own values. Things can go wrong, and checking on it and helping. So I think definitely, and it's also recognition. Now doctors are recognized, they have a license in India, and they are recognized. It says to us, when social workers when we get licensed in social, when social workers get licensed in India, you are getting recognized, and that's a beginning of something. So I would say that's a brilliant thing to start that.
Thank you, ma'am. The next question is from Ms. Agnes Raphael. Her question is, what are the challenges and risks faced by social worker during COVID-19?
I think it depends on the, I think when you say the challenges and risk, now, again, I've been linking with social workers in India as part of British Association, BASWA here, and also working with teams here. One of the risk here that we are seeing is, as in safeguarding, we are legally required to, we have to go and see these children who possibly are in unsafe situation within their family home. So uh, not having enough PPE, people, using this situation in their advantage of saying, oh, we are shielding ourselves, or we are protecting ourselves. And so risk as a social worker in terms of, one, to yourself health, that you cannot go in just like that, like before, because we can make unannounced visits to homes here, and you can't do that now. And you have to inform them, you have to keep a distance. Sometimes you can only see them from the doorstep, so you don't know what is really happening inside. So that is a big risk from a practice point of view. I'm sure in India it's completely different. But again, if you have to go into the community and work, and if there's no social distancing, the health risk to yourself. And I also think there is, I'm not sure how much of recognition and work, the government is giving to you guys at this point in time. So it's so important that there's a risk of you guys doing a lot of work, but actually the government not looking at it. So, in terms of your practice, this could be the best. It's a risk you get unrecognized, but also I would suggest that you make this as an opportunity to make your voice heard, and make it very clear that this is just not an illness. There's a huge psychological issues around this that you guys have the skill to address. So if you so you might want to think about, if you keep quiet, the risk of of you guys not getting recognized.
Thank you, ma'am. The next question is from Kritika N. Please reflect on how important it is to allow children to express themselves and take active responsibilities of themselves and its impact on their mental health.
I think listening to children is key. It will only help them. Listening to children is key. And and it will only, and when you involve them in their decision making, sometimes it might not be the best for them, but you as a social worker helping them to at least, when they feel they have listened to, and you have tried to ensure that in that decision making, that you have included that child, and that this is about the child's life. And that now when we have many looked after children, which the local authority takes care of the children, and I have been in that position of reviewing the care plan. And so at that point, I have to be speaking to those children. When you include them and you understand what they're saying, you're able to make, you're respecting, and you definitely improve the emotional well-being of a child when you listen to them. At least make an attempt. If you don't, and think they are a property of the parents, and yes, they are, but but they have a voice too. So it's just very, very important, because it will help them in the long run.
Ma'am, the next question is from Mr. Praveen. As a social worker professional, can we survive successfully in the field, or should we pursue any technical courses related to social work and counseling?
There's a huge need of social workers all over the world. So I think you can definitely survive with social work. You know, it is there. Yeah. Technically, it might be useful if you're going to be working. I think India or anywhere. Technically, if you're IT skill, because there's a lot. At least here we have a lot of report writing to write. So if you are skilled in IT, that will help you. But otherwise, social work degree, it's in itself, if you take that seriously. And I've come here and done post qualifying award in childcare and management and things like that. That's just to enhance your learning. But otherwise, a social work degree, and doing courses related to your social work degree is much better than doing anything else.
Uh, Ma'am, do you think social workers are properly recognized by other institutions?
I think they're getting recognized. I know at least in the UK, um, they are definitely recognized. Again, I won't say hugely, but yes, because we play a huge role in working with children and families, and everyone has to work together. And yeah, so they do, and in court and all that, the social workers' view is given recognition. But I think in developing countries, it pains me to think that I'm not sure how many social workers are really, and the skills of social workers are used in this COVID-19. So I think recognition in India should definitely be more than ours. That will reflect in your salaries. It will reflect in they including you in big in planning. In a disaster like this, you guys are the key. They cannot survive without social workers. But I don't know how much it's recognized. So yes, I think you guys have to come together to ensure that the government hears your voice.
Thank you, ma'am. The next question is from Ms. Anita. As a mental health practitioner, what are some of the intervention strategies that were implemented for children and adolescents in UK during the pandemic?
Let me clarify, I'm not a mental health practitioner because I work with children and families. Mental health is a completely different, it's called Children and Mental Health Services. So I'm not a mental health practitioner. I work with children and families. But I don't think there is anything, but in terms of therapy, it is based on one-to-one. So I'm not going to go into the details of what therapies they use specifically, because that's not an area that I'm working in. But they continue to be offered one-to-one, therapeutic support based on the needs of the child. And they use here CBT, they use here, many other approaches, but I know that's not an area that I can comment more on.
Okay, ma'am. As a therapist and a practitioner, what are some of the ethical protocols followed during telecounseling for children?
One, I think, I would say when you do telecounseling, I think it's important that, if the child is calling you to tell something confidential, for you to ensure that, they feel safe to do it. Because if they're making a call and there's somebody behind or listening to them, they can be placed at more risk. So when you counsel to say, okay, find out where they are standing, what they are speaking about, what is the issue, and if it is safe enough for them to speak to you, you know so check that out. That will be the basic thing that I would say, that you need to be, and if it is something that, if there's a safeguarding issue that you feel this, this needs to be addressed beyond this child, you need to be telling the child very clearly that, you know for to help her, that you will need to seek other help, other people to help. And you might want to, I don't know again how in India it's done, but you might want to tell that you have a duty to, for, you can't just counsel and leave the child high and dry there. You might want to think, oh my god, there's an issue here. Is there somebody else I need to be involving? So you might need to tell the child, see, this is the issue that you have said, I need to involve somebody else so you can get the right help. So think beyond yourself, think outside the box, and ensure they feel safe.
Thank you, ma'am. The next question is from Dr. Shea Shivakumar. His question is, suggest skills required for budding social workers.
Did you say suggest skills for budding social workers?
Yes, skills required for budding social workers.
I think this one of the, some of the skills are, ability to communicate. One thing you will realize when you come abroad, how the people here are so confident. So they can present their views so well. By the time we try to put a word in, they have told 10 lines in because of their confidence. So one of the skills you really need to have is being able to communicate your point clearly and on time. Okay, so communication is a big skill. You need to have this skill of advocacy, where you are able to speak on behalf of a person. You need to be able to write, the skill of writing. If you have to write a report to the government, or to somebody presenting a case, write it in a way that they will see the key point that you're trying to say, what you're trying to address. So writing skills is so important. Negotiation skills, I think, where you are able to negotiate with people, because this is all about negotiating and saying, and you're working with people, and you're working with, you're working maybe with government, or I don't, with authorities. So able to negotiate with people is another skill that you definitely have to have. And I would say, be, as a skill of, be a skill to jointly work with others. Don't think you can do it all. Work with others. So that's another, in your interpersonal skill to work with others is very important.
Thank you, ma'am. The last question for the day is, in India, the child protection mechanism is from central level to village level, but still, children are facing a lot of abuses. Can you give us some suggestion to improve our protection mechanism?
I think it needs to start from, that's a big question. I think we need to start off from where we are. In terms of our homes, our schools, there's, our homes, we are clear about the boundaries. We are ensuring that our children are safe. Our schools, where teachers are able to recognize there's something happening. So, rather than, admonishing them to find out what the reality is. So safeguarding, where schools play a huge, huge role, because most of us children spend half their life in their school. So empowering the schools to identify and having pastoral, support or counselors in schools is so important. Our health, where when they go in to a doctor with bruises, the doctor can, or with, that you can say, this is not just punishing, but it's much more than that. The doctors don't cover it up, but actually address it. So when people are, so things are not put under the carpet. And for us to realize, as much as we children, in the Indian culture, that they are part of, we see them as our property in a way, but they are much beyond our property. They're a human being, an individual of self-worth and dignity. So to understand the holistic thing needs to happen from home.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I now request you to give the closing remarks and give your suggestions on this session.
I think I've spoken a lot in this session. So just to say that, thank you for inviting me. Thank you for giving me this privilege of sharing my experience and knowledge that I have gained. I hope it was useful in some way. And I genuinely want to say this: you have come into a great profession. Don't go back, build on it, you know develop yourself. And I said, you are the change agent. So keep at it, and all the very best to each one of you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I now request Kasturi Rangan to give the vote of thanks.
For a child to succeed, it is important that we contribute towards the growth of the child as successful learners, confident individuals, effective contributors, and responsible citizens. This would definitely be of great importance for us as social workers and caring adults. And of course, well done would always be the best words of motivation for all of us. On that note, I, Kasturi Rangan, on behalf of PG Department of Social Work Self Finance, MSSW, take great privilege in giving the vote of thanks for this wonderful session on ethical responsibilities of social workers' practice during COVID 19 with special reference to family and children. To begin with, I would like to thank the esteemed speaker for this session, Ms. Priya David, who has given remarkable insights from her personal experience and highlighted the important ethical considerations in social work practice. We thank you for making this session phenomenal, ma'am. I would like to extend my gratitude to Dr. Raja Samuel, Principal, Madras School of Social Work, for his constant support in all the endeavors of our department. I would also like to thank Dr. Francis, Head of the Department, PG Department of Social Work Self Finance, Madras School of Social Work, for his guidance and encouragement in all our efforts. I would like to thank Dr. Rachel and the organizing committee who have taken great efforts in conducting this session. Lastly, I would like to thank all the participants without whom such a session would not have been possible. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, ma'am. Dear participants, the feedback form will be posted in the Zoom and YouTube chat box. Please fill in to give your evaluation and attendance for this session. Thank you so much. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Our tomorrow's session is on COVID-19 and stigma, social work practice in community health at 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. Our resource person for the day is Dr. Beena Thomas, who is a social scientist and consultant of Social and Behavioral Research, National Institute for Research in Tuberculosis, Chennai. We look forward for all your participation for tomorrow's session as well. Thank you, one and all.